here, that's the external acoustic meatus.
Right.
And the external acoustic meatus is this structure that we see right here.
Okay.
Whoops, right here. This is the pinna of the ear. Here's the external acoustic meatus, thank you. And then right here, this is another tube that we have. And this tube is a pretty interesting tube. It's the eustachian tube, or pharyngotympanic tube, or auditory tube. And it's the reason that it's interesting is that this is the structure that is involved in equalizing pressure between the inside of our ears and the outside atmosphere. So whenever you change pressures, like if you go to a high altitude, or if you're on a plane and you're climbing up and you have a change in altitude, the popping that you hear is not the tympanic membrane. Sometimes students think it's this tympanic membrane that's popping, but that's not it. Here, this structure right here, the eustachian tube, it ends in the back of our nose, actually, in what's called the nasopharynx. The pharynx is the fancy name that we use for our throat. But your throat actually extends all the way up to the back of your nose. See, this is your nose right here. This is your nasopharynx. So this little hole that you see right there, that's what we call the opening of the eustachian tube. So this tube right here opens into that. And so sometimes when you have a lot of fluids that accumulate into that eustachian tube, in the inner ear, the fluids will drain down through here. You kind of have a kind of a bad taste in the back of your mouth, and that's what that is. They also, clinically, this becomes important in children, because in children, instead of having an eustachian tube or auditory tube that's in this angle, in children it's a little bit more parallel. So it's harder to drain the fluids that accumulate in this area when they get ear infections. So they tend to get really bad ear infections. So sometimes what they'll do is they will take the tympanic membrane and they'll put a little tube in here, and then instead of the fluids draining out here like they normally do, they will drain out through the ear. So you'll see a lot of crud in the ear of the child or whatever, but that's good. That means that it's draining all of the fluid in that area. So that's our eustachian tube. All right. Over here.
Where was the pinna?
The pinna is just
Is it the whole thing?
It's just your whole ear, which you can grab right here.
Okay.
It's like a reverse megaphone. You know what a megaphone? How you spread the sound like that? This is the opposite. It collects the sounds and brings the sounds here into the external acoustic meatus.
Okay.
And then over here we can see very nicely this structure.
Tympanic membrane.
Tympanic membrane, or your eardrum, more commonly called your eardrum. And then attached to it, if you look at the back, there are two bones in the back, and those two bones are the malleus and the incus. The one right where it's right attached to is the malleus, and then the next one is the incus. And then the third one is over here. See, it articulates. It's a joint, just like any other two bones in our body except the hyoid. That doesn't have a joint, but all the other bones in our body articulate with another bone. And so there it is right there. So we can see right here nicely these stapes. And then what would be behind the stapes?
The oval window?
Would be the oval window. And then right here we see what structure?
The cochlea.
That's the cochlea, the receptors for hearing. And then can you see the space between here and here?
Yes.
Vestibule. And then these three semicircles right here?
Semicircle canal.
Semicircular canals. All right, and then you can see, semicircular canals.
Is that the round window?
And then right here, very good. That would be the round window. This would be the round window right here. So if we look at the cochlea right here, can you see this yellow structure coming out? It's a bundle of axons. Nerve. All right, got that. Nerve. So you got that, Don. Nerve. So we see the cochlear nerve, and the one coming over here from the semicircular canals and vestibule is called the vestibular nerve, and where they both come together, vestibulocochlear nerve.
Cranial nerve 8.
Cranial nerve 8. Very good. Very good. I'll never forget that. Someone's correcting me. Try to call it 7. All right, and then one other structure one other thing I wanted to show you on this model right here that's kind of neat is here, you don't see any of the structures, right? Because you see this on top of it. So when we did our skull right here, and all of our bone markings on our skull, I tried to point out to you, at least in the video, or in some of you I was able to do one-on-one work, but right here, do you remember what this portion of the right here?
Petrous portion?
The petrous portion, good, you remember that. The petrous portion, everybody remember that? Petrous portion here and on here. Okay, it doesn't look like much, and you probably think, well, why the heck do we have to learn that? But here's the petrous portion, and if you take the petrous portion off, notice how it protects all of the inner ear. All of the structures of the inner ear are right there in that petrous portion. So I love this little model there. And also, do you guys remember the name of this hole on the inside of the petrous portion? Internal acoustic meatus. Very good. This was the external acoustic meatus, and the one right here on the inside was the internal. And so if we look at this model, it shows you right here. Here's the internal acoustic meatus right here. And what is it that goes through there?
Oh, the vestibular cochlear.
The vestibulocochlear nerve. That's where it
The front
exits and
door.
goes to the brain. What lobe of the brain does that go to? Vestibulocochlear? To the temple. It also goes to the balance. Or what part of the brain receives? Cerebellum. Very good, very good. See how it all fits together? It all fits together. It's just we have to study it in chunks so that you guys don't kill me. But otherwise, it all fits together. All right, and then what else about? I think for the ear, there's some other little details, but I think they are probably easier done when we get to them in lecture than trying to just memorize their names. But these were pretty easy. This structure,
Cochlea.
this structure right here,
Semicircular
semicircular canals. And what about between the two?
Vestibule.
The vestibule. And what would this be?
The
Vestibulocochlear nerve. Very good. All right, and then right here, can you guys identify this structure? Tympanic membrane, and this first bone right here
That is the
is
that's the
the.
malleus.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's actually this one over here. So that looks like the cerebellus. This is the malleus. The second one over here is the incus, and then you can just barely see if I turn this around.
The stapes.
The stapes. Let me, if I turn this around a little bit. There we go. You guys see the stapes there? All right, and then behind that is the oval window, and then you should also see a little dot there for the round window.
What's this?
Do they have a round window on there? Yeah, round
Styloid
spot.
process.
Oh,
What is
that's
that?
just a little piece of the incus.
Okay.
All right, and then right here, can everybody see that little brown dot? That's the round window. The round one. And again, we'll learn the function of all of these when we lecture. All right, anybody questions? Okay, if not, what I'd like to do is I'd like to go ahead and take out our sheep eyes.